Amelia Fest.
Here.
Oh, you just want
Was first started speaking to the Utica School District Board. And then when Chippewa was running into issues, she started speaking up at the Chippewa Valley School Board. And so, Amelia, take it away.
Don't forget the Trump rally too.
Oh, yeah, Trump rally too. Yeah, make sure you share all that with them, okay?
First off, thank you to everyone for coming to this meeting tonight. I don't like to speak about myself or toot my own horn. My mom usually does that for me. However, I've put together a little background about how my political journey started and some highlights along the way. Our family was pretty much tuned out of politics, except for watching the nightly news, and that's where I got my first taste of politics. Back in 2015, the news was showing clips of Trump rallies, and I became fascinated listening to him speaking. I asked my mom to take me to a rally if he ever came to Michigan. She was hesitant, as she was essentially politically illiterate, but I persisted, and she finally took me to my very first Trump rally. Because I was so little, at age 6, I got right up front along the rope line. I got to speak with Trump, and he autographed a poster for me. I was so excited, and it sparked something inside of me. I wanted to learn and hear more. So my mom investigated local politics and took me with her to everything that she could find. We went to seminars, classes, meetings, campaign events, conventions, and everything to do with politics. While other kids my age were at dance class or football practice, I was meeting politicians, learning about government workings, raising money for candidates, and helping on other campaigns. At just 6, 7, and 8 years old, I didn't always understand a lot of what was being talked about, but I loved meeting people and listening to candidates speak. I learned a lot about public speaking just from hearing and watching them. Typically, I was the only kid at these events, but that didn't bother me and worked to my advantage when it came to getting up front at rallies. All told, my mom and I attended 18 Trump rallies and were official volunteers at over a dozen of them. My mom thought it was important I learn about both sides of the political aisle. So we pretended to be Democrats several times to attend rallies for Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Gretchen Whitmer. I met all of them too, but even as a young child, I could distinguish the difference between the parties and much preferred the Republican events. It was especially difficult to listen to the rhetoric at Democrat rallies and refrain from shouting the truth. But it was crucial not to blow our cover. I began to write letters to some of the high-profile featured speakers and give them to the person at the events. After Vice President Pence read the letter I gave him at an event back in 2018, he invited me and my parents on a private tour of the Eisenhower Executive Office building in D.C. It was fascinating learning so much of the building's history, and I got to sit at Vice President Pence's desk. I'd already built a rapport with my congressman back then and job shadowed him for the day after the building tour. He took me down on the House floor, but my parents had to watch from the gallery. I felt pretty special that day. Kellyanne Conway was a featured speaker at a campaign event back in 2019. I wrote her a letter and I gave it to her. I'd been on the regular White House tour back in 2018, but I wanted to see the West Wing and Oval Office. So I asked in that letter if I could get an invite. And after the event, Kellyanne's aide approached us, gave my mom her card, and said to call her, and she'd set up that private tour. I was beyond ecstatic. By now, we learned more about the ins and outs of politics, so when planning our visit to Washington, my mom called the D.C. offices of some of my favorite senators and congressmen, telling them about my interest in politics and if they would want to meet with me. They were all very generous and set aside time for me to have private meetings with them in their DC offices. My mom also learned when some other senators had coffee hours, and we attended a few of those where I was able to meet and speak with them. I felt so important meeting with officials I'd only see on TV. I met with Senators Tom Cotton, Joni Ernst, James Lankford, John Cornyn, Lindsey Graham, Chuck Grassley, Mitch McConnell, and Congressman Jim Jordan, Dan Crenshaw, and Matt Gaetz. I remember how much security we had to go through before meeting Mitch McConnell. We even got special guest badges, and his office was incredibly fancy with huge chandeliers and a big fireplace. He didn't talk to me as much as he talked to my parents, though. I remember when we arrived at Jim Jordan's office, he was in a meeting with several people, but his secretary announced I had arrived, and he told her to bring me in. All those people had to sit and wait while I had my meeting with Jim. I felt so important. My meeting with Matt Gaetz was also quite memorable. My parents and I sat in his office, and even though I was 10 years old, he treated me like I was the most distinguished person in the room. He asked me all sorts of questions about my political involvement and told me about his role as a congressman. Matt Gaetz was so open and really an interesting person to talk to. But the highlight of that DC visit was the private tour my parents and I got of the White House West Wing. But it was incredible. It was also surreal to be in rooms where so much of our nation's history took place. We walked where some of the most important historical figures had walked. Of course, seeing the Oval Office and sitting behind then President Trump's desk was the most exciting. It was even more special because it was my birthday, the day we visited, and the aide that took us on the tour gave me a special letter, personally signed by Trump and Melania, along with some other special little gifts from the Trumps. It was one of the most memorable birthdays that I have ever had. During all this time, my mom and I continued to immerse ourselves in the political realm. At one event back in 2019, I spoke with the founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. I told him about some of my political involvement, and he personally invited me to his Turning Point Action Summit in Florida. It's an event primarily for high school and college kids, so I was the youngest person at age 10 to ever attend one of their summits. I had such a blast there. The energy was amazing, as were the speakers. The highlight of any event for me was meeting the featured speakers. I got to meet Rudy Giuliani, Glenn Beck, Dinesh D'Souza, Candace Owens, James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Ben Shapiro, Donald Trump Jr., and so many others. At another event, the featured speaker was former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark. After meeting him, my parents and I became good friends with Sheriff. We even had dinner with him and his wife. That was really cool, especially since they brought their tiny Yorkie, Tegan, with them. She spent a lot of time on my lap that evening. Getting involved in politics has offered me some very amazing opportunities, and I've had the honor of meeting so many influential people at various events. I met people like Corey Lewandowski, who was one of Trump's advisors, Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, Governor Kristi Noem, Trump's then press secretary Kayleigh McEnany, Trump's then chief of staff Mark Meadows, Laura Ingraham, Ivanka Trump, Lara Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, General Flynn, and the list goes on. At one exclusive event, I had the privilege of meeting General Keith Kellogg. He was a national security advisor in Trump's administration. He'd written a book, which I brought to the event and asked him to sign it. Before he did, we got into a great conversation. as he told me about some of the photos in his book. Later in that event, we had another conversation with him. I told him about some of my political involvement and how one of the things I really wanted to do was speak on stage at a Trump rally. At the time, I had already been to 16 Trump rallies. He was so amazed. He gave my mom his personal number and said he was going to tell Trump about me. Just days later, he contacted my mom to tell her I was chosen to say the Pledge of Allegiance and speak on stage at the October 1st, 2022 Trump rally in Warren. I was absolutely thrilled. It was a dream come true for me. There was a crowd of over 10,000 people at that rally, and it was incredible to be on the stage with everyone cheering for me as I spoke. If you'd like to watch that speech, just do a search on YouTube or Google for Amelia, Michigan Trump Rally 13. I am the youngest person to ever give a speech on stage at a Trump rally, as I was just 13 at the time. I am the youngest, That was truly an amazing day, as my parents and I got to go backstage and meet with President Trump and get an official photo with him. General Kellogg made a special trip to Michigan just to see me speak at that rally. He was so impressed with my speech and stage presence that he assured me I'd be speaking on a larger stage in the future. I'm not ready to reveal what that is yet, as it's still in the works, but let's just say it's one of the most important GOP events in politics. Speaking on stage at the Trump rally wasn't the first time I had spoken publicly. I'd actually started back around 2021 when schools were mandating masks due to COVID. I was still in public school back then and was being forced to mask. It caused me a lot of problems. I had difficulty breathing, was getting headaches, and feeling physically ill. I decided to bring my concerns regarding forced masking to the school board. It was the first time I spoke publicly, and I was only 12 years old. While I was waiting for my turn to speak at that meeting, I noted the number of times each board member touched their mask and/or pulled it down. When I got up to the podium, I spoke about my mask experience, then went down the entire line of board members and called them out each by name and noted the number of times each had touched their masks or pulled it down. I actually enjoyed pointing out the board's hypocrisy and how ridiculous the mask mandates were. After my speech, I got a standing ovation, and so many people told me how great of a job I did, which encouraged me to continue to voice my concerns. I started attending and speaking at every school board meeting in my district. I made some positive changes there, including getting an American flag in every classroom and ensuring the Pledge of Allegiance was said every day. However, the school board ignored most of my concerns, which included online transparency of their board meetings, being bullied at school daily, and how the counselor handled the incidents very inappropriately, and how teachers were pushing their politics in class, which I was told by the principal was perfectly acceptable. It got to the point where public school was no longer serving my educational needs. My mom began exploring other options and came across a conservative-based homeschool campus. I was interviewed and accepted there, so halfway through 8th grade, I left junior high and started attending that campus. I absolutely loved it, and I continue to attend there. I learned things I'd never learned in public schools, like finance, money management, human pathology, sewing, and factual history.
Wow.
Next school year, I will be taking classes in forensics and psychology. Although I left public school, I wanted to continue to advocate for students who couldn't homeschool or attend a private school. So I continued to speak at school board meetings in my district. word got around and I was soon being asked to speak at other district school board meetings. In June of last year, I started speaking at Chippewa Valley school board meetings. The board there is so much more different than at my district in Utica, where I previously spoke. I discovered how corrupt the Chippewa board is and repeatedly called them out on it. A school board member's wife, along with her group of left-wing activists that attend the meetings, weren't too happy about me speaking there and mocked me on social media and at the meetings. But I don't let that bother me, as I know all my arguments are fact-based. The board has repeatedly tried to silence and intimidate me, but I've stood against their tyranny as well. I created a montage of some of what I've dealt with at Chippewa school board meetings, which I will play for you. The board tried to silence other people at the meetings, but I'm just going to show a few highlights of the board's actions involving me.
They went to sleep. Turned on. Turned off. Turned off. Takes one.
Allegiance at the start of the meeting. Everyone, please stand and join me in standing now. You should be ashamed to speak. And adults, I reclaim my time. And adults must affirm that child's wish. Put it on social media. Keep going, Amelia. In my time. This is my time to speak, not yours. Mr. King, Mr. King,
Wow.
others weighed in on your wife's social media post. One called me an unfortunate child. I'm not unfortunate at all.
No, we're here to listen to you.
No, you asked that we abide by your rules and set our literature here for Mr. Bronsky to pass out. And if you're not going to abide by your own rules, I will take those back and I will pass those out myself to all of you. So it's either
Want
one
to
or
start
the
the
other.
time? I'm sorry, you have really made your own rules up. It's under the rubber rules of order.
You just said it.
Pass them out.
And maybe you
Pass
just
them
said,
out.
oh, you're more than you just said it.
I don't think we should.
You were reading them.
Put it in the minutes too.
Oh, we should.
My camera's on, so I don't need yours.
Reclaim our minutes.
You claim our minutes. It hasn't started yet.
I have not started yet. I reclaim my time. It is my First Amendment right. You reset that timer. Yes.
Reset your time. Reset the time. Reset the time. What's wrong with you people? That's a young lady coming here today.
Reset my time.
Don't come at me. Everybody stop. Don't come at me. Don't come at me. Because you're out of order. Reset her time.
Reset my
Be
time.
a gentleman.
All you gotta do is reset our action start.
Look, courtesy.
Reset my
What you
time.
guys are digging?
Or I will talk over time.
Digging a hole.
Snowflakes.
At the last meeting, I sat in astonishment as Superintendent Roberts tried to gaslight us regarding public comments at these meetings. He told us how important it was that everyone speaking felt listened to by this board, regardless if the board hears things they disagree with. Oh, the hypocrisy, especially after most of this board walked out while I was addressing you at the August meeting. Then, this board's lawyer, Mr. Collins, tried to set rules regarding the content of people's speeches, but also claimed the idea wasn't to censor people. Newsflash, Mr. Collins. Your rules are the very definition of censorship. Apparently, this board is not familiar with the U.S. Constitution, so I've given each of you a copy. No, it is my First Amendment right, and you have taken my time, so I reclaim that time back. Let me see. Reclaim my time back. I am going to continue. Not a valid argument. Claiming that removing the condition.
Excuse me. We're gonna hand them back to you.
Oh, let her go.
Please.
Let her go. Ask your
I
lawyer.
don't think we're running the meeting, sir.
No, but ask your lawyer.
Are you afraid?
It's not gonna hurt
Are you
it.
intimidated by a child?
Yes. They're afraid.
Ask your lawyer.
They're scared.
When I refuse to allow you to violate my First Amendment rights, you abandoned your seats, depriving me the right to address this board. That was a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Then, you tried to hide this by editing the video footage of the last meeting before posting it on the school website. You removed most of my speech and Mr. King's reply stating his support for his wife's social media post that tried to shame me. You removed Mr. Pearl adjourning the meeting without a floor motion and the footage showing most of you leaving while a child was addressing you.
Most of these wonderful, concerned parents are moving a 14-year-old young woman to be discourteous.
Excuse me, don't talk about the young girl. Excuse me, don't talk about the 14-year-old girl. Don't talk about the 14. That's harassment. You're harassing her. You're not allowed to talk. Her parents right here. Stop.
Hey, Mr. Pearl.
You cannot talk about the 14. I'm telling you right now. I'm not gonna tolerate it. If they tolerate, I'm not tolerating it.
The other
Address the board. Don't address the girl. Address the board. Don't address the girl.
Time for a reality check here. I wonder if people realize what Mr. Roberts, this district superintendent's salary is. I looked it up and saw it's over $392,000 per year. That's almost as much as the U.S. president. And what are parents getting for that price? It's certainly not a top-notch education for their kids. Proficiency scores in this district have been abysmal for years. The math proficiency at Chippewa Valley High School and Wyandotte Middle School is only 29%. It's only 22% in Algonquin Middle School. Clinton Valley's score is shocking, 20%. The reading proficiency at Erie and Miami Elementary is at 35%, and Ottawa Elementary is only 20%. These scores are definitely not worthy of an almost $400,000 yearly price tag.
Rather than admit to his hypocrisy and support for a hate group, stop interrupting me, I didn't interrupt you. Or even apologize in any fashion. He laughed it off at the last meeting and said, in part, quote, "There's an odd fascination." Turn my microphone back on. I won't.
Giving you a first warning.
So you're violating my First Amendment rights, and you don't want to hear about.
This is limited First Amendment rights.
How you got limited First Amendment? No, it's not limited, buddy.
Okay.
Just because you don't agree.
She's not making a threat. Parents are running out.
Screenshots, and I have all the information.
I
It's
don't
true.
really care, okay?
You don't care, huh?
Yeah. I don't want any personal attacks.
Let's
I'm
keep going.
getting to that part.
Me,
Stop interrupting me, please.
No, I'm gonna interrupt you. If you continue, then we ask to go to the second warning.
How are you gonna give her a second warning? She's not interrupting.
Now we can see clearly that there is only one board member remaining. What does that say to the parents of this district?
They don't care.
They don't care about what everybody thinks.
We're good.
So, as you can see, Chippewa doesn't take kindly to speakers exercising their First Amendment rights. My mom records my speeches and posts them on her YouTube channel. Over a dozen videos from my speeches at Chippewa Valley went viral on every platform. Some are on their 4th and 5th rounds. I've become known for schooling the school board. One of my speeches was featured and played on the podcast And We Know, which is the top 1.5% of podcasts. Many YouTubers made and continue to make their own videos reacting to my speeches, and those videos have gone viral. Millions of people have commented positively on all those videos. Even though I don't see myself as a hero, it seems other people do. I'm happy I'm inspiring them and giving them hope for the future. My videos are bringing awareness to the failings of public schools and policies made by corrupt school boards. People are taking notice of what's happening in their own districts. They'll be more informed about their school board candidates when they go to the voting booth. This will lead to the election of people on school boards who will make positive changes and improve education for public schools. I never imagined any of this would happen. I'm just a 14-year-old kid, about to be 15 in a couple weeks, but I'm here to tell you that one small voice can make a huge difference. Getting involved in politics, learning about government workings, and paying attention to what's happening and what elected officials are saying is extremely important. As a kid, you won't understand it all, but the experience is invaluable and will lead to better comprehension when you're older of what's going on in our country. Government and civics classes are also easier when you've already experienced politics in the real world.
Yeah.
Last year, I was honored to be chosen to be part of our Congresswoman Lisa McLean's Congressional Youth Council. It was the first and only one in Michigan. Only 12 kids were chosen based on merit and experience to be in the council. We learned more about the duties of elected officials in Congress and were each tasked with creating a bill that would be presented by Lisa on the House floor in D.C. My bill prevents illegal aliens from joining the military and gave multiple solutions to boost recruitment into the U.S. military. My bill was voted on by the council to be presented on the House floor in D.C. by our Congresswoman, and I plan to be there in person when that happens. There's so many other things I could tell you about who I met and what I've experienced, but we would probably be here all night. Politics is not easy for a kid to get immersed in, but kids in public schools should never be afraid to bring their grievances up at school board meetings. The board's main job is to ensure every student receives a proper education, and that prepares them for a successful future. The board may not like what you say, but they're obligated to listen and should take action. If they don't, then call them out. Keep speaking out. Be assertive and be bold, and never let them intimidate you or silence your voice. It's your right to speak and advocate for yourself within the confines of the law. I want to emphasize how important it is, especially now, for everyone to get involved in what's going on in our community. If you have kids in public school, then it's crucial to attend school board meetings. If you want to know how your tax dollars are being spent, what curriculum is being taught, what policies are being implemented, and so forth, it's imperative to know who your school board members are, as their policies and decisions directly affect your child's education. You want to make sure you vet all candidates before entering the voting booth. Those on the down ballot are just as important as the choices for President, Senate, and Congress. We're experiencing the consequences of corrupt elected officials. The election in November will be the most important of our lifetime. It will determine if our country becomes prosperous and great again, or will continue to be destroyed. What kind of country Do you want to leave your kids and grandkids? If you want them to have any sort of successful future, then do research. Listen to the right people. Go to school boards and other community meetings. Know what your kids are being taught in their classroom. Oppose destructive ideologies and indoctrination. If possible, pull your kids out from public schools and enroll them in private homeschool groups. A proper education is crucial for kids to lead successful and happy adult lives. Make politics, civics, and current events topics of conversation with your kids at levels easy for them to understand. Kids who can research and critically think and who are informed with facts are nearly impossible to indoctrinate. They'll be equipped to attend college without being caught up in destructive ideologies and agendas. And they'll graduate with degrees affording them productive and prosperous careers. Proper education and parental involvement in the educational process is crucial to success. It's time to take our country back, but we can only do that if everyone gets educated, gets involved, and makes their vote count. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight and listening to my story.
Stand up. Stand up.